Powerful Comanche chief is slowly dying from an unknown illness. But what if it's not a sickness at all? A young white woman held captive by the tribe begins to notice strange signs. Things only she can understand. The truth she's about to uncover could shake the tribe to its core. Thank you so much for watching, and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The scorching Texas sun beat down mercilessly on the Comanche encampment, nestled in the valley between rolling hills covered with mesquite and dry grass. It was the summer of 1853, and the people, as the Comanche called themselves, had established their temporary village near a creek that still held precious water, despite the relentless heat. Dozens of buffalo hide teepees stood in organized clusters, their tops open to allow smoke from cooking fires to escape into the cloudless sky. Inside the largest teepee at the center of the camp, Chief Nakoa lay on a bed of furs, his powerful frame weakened by an illness that had plagued him for nearly 2 moons. Once a warrior whose very name struck fear into the hearts of his enemies, he was now reduced to a shadow of his former self. His bronze skin had taken on an unhealthy pallor, and his muscular body, hardened by countless battles and buffalo hunts, had grown lean and frail. Beads of sweat covered his forehead, despite the relative coolness inside the shelter. Nakoa was only 30 winters old in the prime of his life, yet he felt as ancient as the hills surrounding their camp. His thick black hair, usually worn in 2 long braids decorated with eagle feathers, earned through acts of bravery, now hung limp and dull. His dark eyes, once sharp as an eagle's and filled with the fire of leadership, had become clouded with pain and confusion. Beside him knelt Makya, the tribe's medicine man, an elderly figure with a deeply lined face that spoke of 7 decades of accumulated wisdom. His gnarled hands moved with practiced precision as he prepared yet another healing remedy, grinding herbs in a stone bowl. The old healer's expression was grave, his weathered brow furrowed with concern that he could no longer hide from his chief. "Great chief, you must eat," Makya urged in the Comanche tongue, his voice rough with age and worry. "Your strength fades like the evening sun. This sickness, it does not behave like any illness I have seen in all my years. You improve for a day, then worsen again. It is as if the spirits themselves are confused." Nakoa attempted to sit up, but a wave of nausea forced him back down onto the furs. His stomach churned violently, and his head pounded with a pain that felt like war drums beating inside his skull. "I cannot keep food down, old friend. Everything I consume returns to torment me. Perhaps it is my time to join our ancestors in the spirit world." "Do not speak such words," Makya chided gently, though his eyes reflected his own growing fear. "The people need you. Without your leadership, the young warriors grow restless. Tokala speaks too often of war against the white settlers, while you have always counseled wisdom and strategy." The medicine man's words were true. Tokala, Nakoa's cousin and a fierce warrior in his own right, had been circling leadership like a wolf waiting for the alpha to fall. Tokala was brave, there was no questioning that, but he lacked the tempering wisdom that made Nakoa such an effective chief. Where Nakoa saw the value in choosing battles carefully, Tokala saw only the glory of warfare. Outside the teepee, the camp bustled with activity despite the oppressive heat. Women worked tirelessly, scraping buffalo hides stretched on wooden frames, their hands moving with the efficiency born of lifelong practice. Children laughed and played games between the lodges, their joy a stark contrast to the somber mood surrounding their chief's dwelling. Warriors sat in groups, maintaining their weapons, sharpening arrows, and speaking in low voices about their leader's mysterious illness. Near the edge of the encampment, separated from the main activities, stood a smaller teepee where the captives were kept. Inside, a young white woman named Sarah Mitchell sat on the hard ground, her wrists bound with rawhide strips. She was 22 years old, with long auburn hair that caught the light like copper, and green eyes that still held a spark of defiance despite her circumstances. Her calico dress, once a pretty blue pattern, was now torn and stained from her ordeal. Sarah had been taken 3 months ago during a raid on a settler wagon train, traveling through Comanche territory. She had been traveling with her father, a merchant hoping to establish trade in San Antonio, and her younger brother. The attack had been swift and brutal. Her father had been killed in the initial assault, and her brother had managed to escape in the chaos. Sarah had been captured along with 2 other women, though they had been traded to another tribe weeks ago, leaving her alone among her captors. The young woman had spent her captivity learning to survive. She observed everything, understanding that knowledge might be her only path to freedom. She had picked up fragments of the Comanche language, enough to understand basic conversations. The women of the tribe had put her to work performing menial tasks, fetching water, gathering firewood, and helping with food preparation under constant supervision. Despite her situation, Sarah possessed a sharp mind and a resilient spirit. Before the attack, she had helped her father with his business dealings, learning to read people and situations with surprising accuracy. She had also assisted the town doctor back in Missouri, learning about herbs and medicines that could heal or harm. This knowledge, she was beginning to realize, might prove more valuable than she had ever imagined. As the afternoon sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sarah was brought to Chief Nakoa's teepee by Ayanna, one of the older women who had shown her the least cruelty. Ayanna was a dignified woman of perhaps 45 winters, with kind eyes and a gentle manner that suggested she had not always agreed with the practice of taking captives. "Come, white woman," Ayanna said in halting English, one of the few in the camp who could speak the language. "Chief needs water. You help." Sarah rose stiffly, her muscles aching from sleeping on the hard ground. She followed Ayanna through the camp, acutely aware of the hostile stares from some of the warriors. Tokala, in particular, watched her with undisguised contempt. He was a tall, powerfully built man with a cruel set to his mouth and eyes as hard as flint. His hatred of all whites was well known throughout the camp. When they entered the chief's teepee, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Despite her situation, despite everything she had endured, she found herself struck by Chief Nakoa's presence even in his weakened state. He possessed a nobility of bearing that transcended his current illness. His features were strong and handsome, with high cheekbones and a firm jawline. Even now, racked with sickness, there was something magnificent about him. Nakoa's eyes, clouded though they were with pain, focused on Sarah with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. For a moment their gazes locked, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of each other's essential humanity that transcended the circumstances of captor and captive. "Water," Makia instructed, gesturing to the clay vessel Sarah carried. As Sarah knelt beside the chief to offer him water, she noticed details that the Comanche healer seemed to have missed. Nakoa's symptoms, the violent nausea, the weakness that came and went, the confusion, all reminded her of something she had seen before. Back in Missouri, the town doctor had treated a woman who had been slowly poisoned by her jealous sister. The symptoms had been remarkably similar. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she held the water vessel to Nakoa's lips. The chief drank gratefully, his eyes never leaving her face. When he had finished, he spoke softly in Comanche, his voice weak, but still carrying authority. "What does he say?" Sarah asked Ayanna quietly. The older woman translated, her expression curious. "He says your eyes hold the color of new grass in spring. He asks why you do not show fear like the other captives." Sarah considered her response carefully. "Tell him that I have learned fear serves no purpose. Tell him that I wish to understand the people, to know why my life was spared when others were not," Ayanna translated, and Nakoa's lips curved in the faintest of smiles despite his discomfort. He spoke again, longer this time, his words coming with obvious effort. "The chief says you have a warrior's spirit, even though you are a woman and white. He says this is why you live. He says perhaps the spirits have a purpose for you among us." Ayanna's voice held a note of wonder, as if she too was surprised by her chief's words. Before Sarah could respond, Nakoa was seized by another violent bout of nausea. Makia quickly brought forward a bowl, supporting the chief as his body rebelled against him. Sarah watched with growing certainty. These were not the symptoms of any natural illness. Someone was poisoning the chief, and doing so with careful deliberation, ensuring the doses were not immediately fatal, but gradually weakening him until his body could no longer recover. As Makia cleaned and cared for Nakoa, Sarah's mind raced. Should she speak her suspicions? Would anyone believe a white captive? And yet if she remained silent and the chief died, what would become of her? Tokala would surely assume leadership, and his hatred of whites would likely mean her death. That night, Sarah lay awake in the captive's teepee, her mind working through the puzzle before her. The moon cast silver light through the smoke hole above, and she could hear the sounds of the camp settling into sleep. Guards walked their routes around the perimeter, their footsteps crunching on the dry earth. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, its lonely cry echoing across the plains. She had to find proof. Mere suspicion would not be enough, especially coming from a white captive. The Comanche would never believe her without evidence. Sarah thought back to her time helping the doctor in Missouri. Poison had to be administered regularly to maintain its effects. If someone was poisoning Chief Nakoa, they would need access to his food or drink, and they would need to do so consistently. As the first light of dawn began to paint the eastern sky in shades of rose and gold, Sarah was already awake. Ayana came to collect her for the day's work, and Sarah was assigned to help prepare the morning meal. This gave her the opportunity she needed to observe the preparation of the chief's food. The cooking area was supervised by Huyana, the oldest woman in the tribe and grandmother to many of the warriors. Her weathered hands moved with practiced efficiency as she directed the younger women in their tasks. Sarah worked quietly, grinding corn into meal, but her eyes were always watching, always searching for anything unusual. It was Tokala's wife, Kimimela, who prepared the chief's special broth. The woman was younger than Sarah had expected, perhaps 25 winters, with delicate features and hands that moved with nervous quickness. Kimimela was beautiful in the traditional Comanche way, with long black hair braided intricately and decorated with beads. But there was something in her eyes, a hardness that seemed at odds with her gentle appearance. Sarah watched as Kimimela added herbs to the broth, her movements swift and practiced. Most of the herbs Sarah recognized as medicinal, meant to strengthen and heal. But then, with a furtive glance around to ensure no one was watching too closely, Kimimela added something else from a small pouch hidden in the folds of her dress. The addition was so quick, so practiced, that anyone not specifically watching would have missed it entirely. Sarah's heart began to pound. She had found her poisoner, but now what? She continued her work, forcing her hands to remain steady as she ground the corn, all while her mind raced through possibilities. Kimimela was Tokala's wife. If the chief died, Tokala would become leader. The motive was clear as the spring water. The broth was carried to Nakoa's teepee by Makia himself, as was customary. Sarah knew she had to act. But how? If she made an accusation without proof, Tokala would simply have her killed. She needed to catch Kimimela in the act, or she needed to test the poison herself to prove its existence. An opportunity presented itself later that morning. Sarah was sent to gather firewood from the scrub brush beyond the camp's edge, accompanied by 2 young girls who were supposed to watch her. The girls, however, were more interested in picking wildflowers than in guarding a captive who had shown no inclination to escape. Sarah worked quickly, gathering dead branches and dry mesquite, but her mind was focused on her plan. She had noticed that Kimimela kept the poison pouch in a small leather bag that hung from her waist. If Sarah could somehow get close enough during the midday meal preparation, she might be able to take a sample of whatever substance was being used. When they returned to camp, the sun was high overhead, beating down with relentless intensity. The temperature had climbed to a sweltering degree that made every movement an effort. Sarah delivered her firewood and was immediately put to work, helping prepare the midday meal. Once again, Kimimela was present, and once again she prepared a special portion for the chief. Sarah positioned herself near where Kimimela worked, pretending to struggle with a heavy water vessel. As she had hoped, the Comanche woman stepped over to help, her movements graceful despite the heat. In that moment when Kimimela bent to assist her, Sarah's fingers moved with a speed and dexterity born of desperation. She lifted the small pouch from Kimimela's waist, palming it with the skill of a practiced thief, replacing it with a similar pouch filled with harmless ground herbs that she had prepared the night before from the scraps given to captives for tea. Kimimela noticed nothing, and Sarah's heart hammered so loudly in her chest that she was certain everyone could hear it. She excused herself quickly, claiming the need to relieve herself, and hurried to the edge of camp where the women went for privacy. There, hidden behind a scrub oak, she opened the pouch and examined its contents. The powder inside was a dull gray color with tiny flecks of green. Sarah carefully touched a single grain to her tongue and immediately recognized the bitter, metallic taste. White snake root, a plant that grew in the wooded areas of Texas. She had seen it before in Missouri, where it was known to poison cattle and, occasionally, humans who consumed milk or meat from affected animals. But this was different. This was the plant itself, processed and concentrated. In small, regular doses, it would cause exactly the symptoms Nakoa displayed. Sarah wrapped the pouch carefully in a strip of cloth torn from her underskirt and tucked it securely in her bodice. She now had her proof, but she still faced the monumental challenge of convincing anyone to believe her. She needed an ally, someone within the tribe who might listen to a white captive's accusations against the wife of a powerful warrior. As she walked back toward the camp, Sarah noticed Ayanna watching her with curious eyes. The older woman had always been kind to her, treating her with more humanity than most. Perhaps she could be trusted. But before Sarah could approach her, a commotion erupted from the center of camp. Chief Nakoa had taken a turn for the worse. His teepee was surrounded by worried tribe members, and Makia's voice could be heard chanting healing prayers. Sarah pushed through the crowd, her borrowed proof heavy against her chest. She had to act now, before it was too late. Inside the teepee, Nakoa writhed in agony, his powerful body racked with convulsions. Makia knelt beside him, his ancient face twisted with despair and helplessness. Tokala stood in the corner, his expression carefully neutral, but Sarah caught the gleam of anticipation in his dark eyes. Kimimela was also present, playing the role of concerned tribe member with practiced ease. "Please," Sarah said in her halting Comanche, the words she had learned over 3 months suddenly vital. "I help. I know. Medicine, white medicine." Makia looked up at her, his eyes reflecting both skepticism and desperation. "You are a captive. Why would you help our chief?" Sarah met his gaze steadily, then looked at Nakoa, whose eyes had found hers even through his pain. In that moment, she realized her feelings had evolved beyond mere survival instinct. This man, her captor, had shown her mercy when he could have shown cruelty. He had seen her as a person, not just a prize of war. And something deeper stirred in her heart, something she had not expected to feel. "Because it is wrong," she said simply, still in Comanche, the words coming slowly but with conviction. "Because poison is coward's weapon. Because I know truth." Tokala stepped forward, his hand moving to the knife at his waist. "The white woman speaks madness. She should not even be here in our chief's presence during this sacred time." "Wait." Nakoa's voice was weak but still carried authority. He struggled to sit up, his eyes locked on Sarah. "Let her speak. My spirit tells me to listen." Sarah pulled the pouch from her bodice, holding it up for all to see. "This poison. In food. Every day, small amount. Make Chief sick, not die quick. Someone want Chief die slow, look like natural." Makia took the pouch, his hands trembling as he opened it and examined the contents. His face paled as recognition dawned. "White snake root. This is deadly poison. Where did you get this?" Sarah's eyes moved to Kimimela, who had backed toward the teepee entrance, her face a mask of barely concealed panic. "From her. She put in Chief's food. I watch. I see. This morning she add to broth." Kimimela's composure shattered. "Lies. The white witch lies. She tries to divide us, to weaken us. This is what white people do." But Tokala's reaction betrayed them both. Instead of defending his wife, his hand moved instinctively to his weapon, his eyes calculating as he assessed the warriors present and their loyalty. That single gesture told everyone in the teepee everything they needed to know. "You knew," Nakoa said, his voice gaining strength as rage burned through his weakness. "You knew your wife poisoned me. You planned to take my place as chief." Tokala's face twisted with fury and frustration. "You grow weak. You speak of peace with the whites while they steal our lands. You refuse to let us raid as our fathers did. Yes, I knew. Yes, I planned. The people need a strong leader, not one who treats our enemies with mercy. The confrontation erupted into chaos. Warriors who had been loyal to Nakoa surrounded Tokala, while a few who sympathized with his more aggressive stance moved to defend him. Kimimela tried to flee but was caught by Ayana and 2 other women. The teepee filled with angry voices, accusations, and the sound of weapons being drawn. "Enough!" Nakoa's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. Despite his weakened state, he rose to his feet, swaying slightly but standing with the bearing of a true chief. "There will be no bloodshed in my lodge. Tokala, you and your wife will be judged by the Council of Elders. If you are found guilty of this betrayal, you will be exiled from the people. You will be as dead to us." Tokala spat on the ground, his face contorted with rage. "Exile me then. I will find others who think as I do. The Comanche will need warriors when the whites come to destroy us all, and they will remember that I was right." As the warriors dragged Tokala and Kimimela from the teepee, Nakoa's strength finally gave out. He collapsed back onto his furs, but his eyes sought Sarah's. She moved to his side instinctively, supporting his head and bringing water to his lips. "You saved my life," he said softly in Comanche, his hand reaching up to touch her face with surprising gentleness. "Why? I am your captor, your enemy." Sarah looked into his dark eyes and saw not an enemy, but a man of honor who had been betrayed by his own blood. "Because you are not my enemy. Because you spared my life when you did not have to. Because what was being done to you was wrong." Makya approached, his ancient face creased with wonder. "The white woman speaks truth and shows great courage. She has saved our chief and exposed traitors among us. This is a debt that cannot be measured." Over the following days, as Nakoa's body slowly purged itself of the accumulated poison, Sarah remained by his side. Makya had declared that she alone would care for the chief, as she had proven herself trustworthy beyond measure. The other tribe members, witnessing her devotion and the role she had played in saving their leader, began to view her differently. She was no longer just a white captive. She had become something more. The Texas summer gradually gave way to early autumn, and the Comanche camp witnessed a transformation that would have seemed impossible mere weeks ago. Chief Nakoa's recovery was nothing short of miraculous, though Makya insisted it was the combination of Sarah's knowledge and the chief's own warrior spirit that had defeated the poison's grip on his body. Sarah spent every day at Nakoa's side during his recovery, and something profound blossomed between them. At first, their conversations were simple, conducted in a mixture of broken Comanche and English, with Ayana often serving as translator. Sarah taught Nakoa more English words, while he patiently helped her master the complexities of the Comanche language. But language was only the surface of what they were learning about each other. Nakoa told her of his childhood, of learning to ride before he could properly walk, of his first buffalo hunt at 12 winters, of the day he had earned his name, which meant brave one, by defending the camp from a raid by enemy tribes. He spoke of his dreams for his people, of finding a way to coexist with the encroaching white settlers without losing the Comanche way of life. "I know the old ways are ending," he confided to her one evening as they sat outside his teepee, watching the sun paint the sky in brilliant shades of crimson and gold. His strength had returned significantly, and the color had come back to his bronze skin. "I am not blind like Tokala thought. The whites come in greater numbers every season. We cannot fight them all, but I want my people to survive, to adapt without losing who we are." Sarah listened, her heart aching at the wisdom and sadness in his words. "My people see only land to take, not the lives already living here. They do not understand the Comanche, do not see the honor and the beauty of your ways. I did not understand either, until I lived among you." Nakoa turned to look at her, his dark eyes intense in the fading light. He had grown to love the way the sunset caught the copper highlights in her auburn hair, the way her green eyes reflected the colors of the prairie grass. "And what do you see now, Sarah of the white people?" She met his gaze without hesitation, her heart beating faster. "I see a man of great wisdom and courage. I see a leader who cares more for his people's future than for his own glory. I see someone who showed mercy to a captive when he could have shown cruelty. I see you, Nakoa." The chief reached out and took her hand, his calloused warrior's fingers gentle against her skin. "You are no longer a captive, Sarah Mitchell. You have earned your freedom through your bravery and your compassion. You may leave if you wish, and I will provide you with a horse and supplies to reach the nearest white settlement." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Freedom, the thing she had dreamed of during those first terrifying weeks. But now, looking into Nakoa's eyes, she realized that leaving would mean abandoning something precious, something she had never expected to find. "And if I do not wish to leave?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Nakoa's hand tightened on hers, and she saw hope kindle in his eyes like a flame. "Then I would ask you to stay, not as a captive but as one of the people, as my woman, if you would honor me by accepting." The proposal hung in the air between them, weighted with all the impossibility and all the rightness of their situation. Sarah knew what accepting would mean. She would be forever separated from the white world, branded as a traitor or a savage by her own people. But the white world had taken her father, had left her brother to an unknown fate. The Comanche had given her purpose, had shown her strength she did not know she possessed, and had given her Nakoa. "Yes," she said simply, and the smile that broke across Nakoa's face was like the sun emerging from behind clouds. He pulled her close, and their lips met in a kiss that sealed their fate and their future. The news of the chief's intention to take Sarah as his wife spread through the camp like wildfire. The reaction was mixed. Some of the older members of the tribe, including Makia and Ayana, saw it as a sign of changing times and supported the union. The younger warriors were more divided. Some saw Sarah's actions in saving their chief as proof of her worth, while others viewed it as an unwelcome dilution of Comanche blood and traditions. A council was called, as was customary for important tribal decisions. The elders gathered in the largest teepee, and Nakoa stood before them, his bearing once again that of a strong and healthy leader. Sarah stood beside him, dressed now in Comanche clothing that Ayana and the other women had made for her, a beautiful doe-skin dress decorated with intricate beadwork and fringe. The eldest council member, a man called Chaitin who had seen 80 winters, spoke first. His voice was thin with age, but still carried authority. "Chief Nakoa, you ask us to accept a white woman as one of our own, as your wife and potentially the mother of the next generation of leaders. This is unprecedented. What say you to those who claim this dishonors our traditions?" Nakoa stood tall, his voice clear and strong. "Honored elders, I say that our traditions teach us to value courage, wisdom, and loyalty above all else. Sarah Mitchell has shown all three. She risked her life to save mine, uncovering a betrayal that came from within our own people. My own cousin sought my death. A white captive saved me. What does this tell us? It tells us that honor is not determined by the color of skin, but by the content of character." Another elder, a woman named Maska, nodded slowly. "The chief speaks wisdom, but what of her people? They will not understand. They may see this as a kidnapping, may use it as an excuse to bring soldiers against us." Sarah stepped forward, her Comanche now fluent enough to address the council directly. "Honored elders, I speak for myself. I am no longer claimed by the white world. My father is dead, my brother lost. I have no family among them, but here I have found purpose and belonging. I have found love. I choose the Comanche freely, and I choose Chief Nakoa as my husband. I will learn all your ways, honor all your traditions, and stand with the people as one of you." Makia rose, his ancient bones creaking. "I have lived long and seen much. I have seen the white men come in greater numbers each year. I have seen how they view us, how they wish to destroy our way of life. But this woman is different. She has seen beyond the walls of hatred that separate our peoples. Perhaps she is a bridge sent by the spirits to show us a new path. I support this union." Ayana spoke next, her voice warm with emotion. "I have watched Sarah closely since she came among us. I have seen her work without complaint, learn without pride, and act with courage when it mattered most. She has the heart of a Comanche woman. She belongs with us. She belongs with our chief." One by one, the elders voiced their opinions. Some remained skeptical, but the majority were swayed by Nakoa's recovery, by Sarah's proven character, and by the changing times they all sensed approaching. When the final vote was taken, the council approved the union by a wide margin. The wedding ceremony took place 3 days later, under a sky so blue it seemed to stretch into infinity. It was a beautiful Comanche ceremony, blending ancient traditions with the unique nature of the union. Sarah wore a white doe-skin dress that had taken the women of the tribe days to create, decorated with hundreds of tiny beads and patterns that told the story of courage and new beginnings. Nakoa stood tall and magnificent in his ceremonial clothing, his chest bare except for a breastplate made of bone and beads, his face painted with symbols of leadership and strength. Eagle feathers adorned his long black hair, and his eyes shone with love and pride as Sarah approached him. Makia conducted the ceremony, his voice rising and falling in the ancient words of blessing. He spoke of the sacred nature of marriage, of two spirits becoming one, of the responsibilities and joys that awaited them. He burned sacred herbs, and the smoke rose to carry their vows to the spirits of sky and earth. Sarah and Nakoa stood face to face, their hands joined, as Makia wrapped a single blanket around both of them, symbolizing their union. Nakoa spoke his vows in Comanche, promising to protect, provide, and cherish Sarah for all their days. Sarah responded in kind, her voice clear and strong, promising to honor the Comanche ways, to stand beside her husband in times of peace and conflict, and to love him with all her heart. As the ceremony concluded, the entire tribe erupted in celebration. There was feasting on roasted buffalo, venison, and wild turkey. There was dancing around the great fire that blazed in the center of camp, the flames reaching toward the stars that began to emerge in the darkening sky. Drums beat out rhythms that seemed as old as the earth itself, and voices were raised in songs of joy and blessing. Sarah and Nakoa danced together, and she learned the steps quickly, her body moving in harmony with his. The women of the tribe ululated their approval, and even the most skeptical of the warriors had to admit that their chief had chosen well. Sarah's face glowed with happiness, her green eyes reflecting the firelight, and Nakoa could not remember ever feeling so complete. As the celebration continued long into the night, Nakoa and Sarah slipped away to the teepee that had been prepared for them. Inside it was warm and private, lit by a small fire and decorated with the finest furs and blankets the tribe could provide. They came together as husband and wife, their love transcending all the boundaries that had once separated them. In the days and weeks that followed, Sarah fully embraced her new life. She learned to tan hides properly, to cook traditional Comanche foods, to make clothing and moccasins. The women who had once guarded her as a captive now taught her as a sister. She proved herself skilled with horses, and Nakoa gifted her with a beautiful paint mare that she named Spirit. But Sarah brought her own gifts to the tribe as well. Her knowledge of white medicine complemented Makia's traditional healing practices. She taught the women new techniques for preserving food and treating common ailments. Her ability to speak both English and Comanche fluently made her invaluable when trading parties encountered white merchants. As winter approached and the tribe prepared to move to their traditional winter grounds in a more sheltered valley, news reached them through trading networks. Tokala and Kimimela had been found by another Comanche band far to the north. Tokala had tried to convince them to join him in attacking white settlements, but when the truth of his betrayal of his own chief became known, that band had turned him away as well. The last anyone had heard, the exiled couple was heading toward Mexican territory, forever separated from the people they had betrayed. One evening, as the first snow of winter began to fall softly outside their teepee, Sarah sat with Nakoa, her head resting on his shoulder. His arm was wrapped around her, holding her close, and they watched the fire dance and flicker. "Do you ever regret your choice?" Nakoa asked quietly, his fingers gently stroking her hair. "Do you miss your old life?" Sarah lifted her head to look at him, her green eyes meeting his dark ones with complete honesty. "I miss my father, and I wonder about my brother, hoping he found safety. But regret? Never. That life was not truly mine. I was simply existing, following the path others had chosen for me. Here with you, with the people, I am truly alive. I am truly myself." Nakoa kissed her forehead, her cheeks, and finally her lips, a kiss full of tenderness and promise. "You have given me more than my life back, Sarah. You have given me hope for the future, a future where perhaps our peoples can learn to see each other as we see each other, not as enemies, but as human beings capable of love and understanding. Sarah smiled, placing her hand over her belly where she suspected, though it was too early to be certain, that new life was already growing. Perhaps our children will be part of that future, carrying the best of both worlds within them. The snow continued to fall outside, covering the plains in white, but inside the teepee, warmth and love prevailed. Sarah Mitchell, who had come to the Comanche as a captive, had found her true home and her true love. Chief Nakoa, who had nearly been destroyed by poison and betrayal, had been saved by the most unlikely of heroes, and had found in her a partner worthy of his heart. Their story would be told around Comanche fires for generations to come, a tale of courage, wisdom, and love that transcended all boundaries. It was a story of how a white woman saved a Comanche chief, and in doing so, saved herself. It was a story of two souls who found each other across a divide that seemed impossible to cross, proving that love and honor recognize no borders. As the years would pass, Sarah and Nakoa would face many challenges together. The world around them would continue to change. The pressure from white expansion would increase, and difficult decisions would have to be made. But they would face it all together, bound by a love forged in the most unlikely circumstances, strengthened by mutual respect and unwavering commitment. And on quiet nights, when the work was done and the camp was peaceful, Nakoa would still look at his wife with wonder, remembering the day a captive white woman had shown more loyalty and courage than his own blood. Sarah would meet his gaze with equal love, knowing that she had found her destiny in the last place she ever expected to look. Their love story became legend, a beacon of hope that understanding and compassion could bridge even the widest divides, and that sometimes the greatest love stories begin in the most impossible circumstances. Together, they had built something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy and captivity, a testament to the resilience of the human heart and the transformative power of true love.